Welcome to Second Round Syndrome.
Round 2, fight.
Welcome on into Second Round Syndrome, your talk for the Philadelphia 76ers and the NBA. I'm your host, DJ Sports Zone. With me is my co-host, Jordan Sabel. How's it going, dude?
There's a lot of positives in my life, with everything I'm doing right now, but the Sixers are not part of that. And you can thank Josh Harris and Daryl Morey for the absolute outrageous travesty of a trade deadline within the Sixers.
Yeah, this show today is going to be a therapeutic session for Sixers fans. This is especially our time, myself and Jordan. This is our time to get all of our frustrations out because the Philadelphia 76ers insulted Sixers fans. What they did by that Thursday trade deadline was a total embarrassment. They traded, here's the moves they did. Just for those that maybe aren't aware at this point, they made two moves. They traded Jared McCain, and this is the worst one of them all. They traded Jared McCain to the reigning NBA champions, reigning defending NBA champions, the Oklahoma City Thunder, for a 2026 Rockets first round pick and 3 second round picks. And then as a throwaway trade, they also traded Eric Gordon to the Memphis Grizzlies for a 2032 second round pick swap, whatever a second round pick swap even means. My problem necessarily isn't that they just traded Jared McCain, right? Yes, you could be mad that they traded a 21-year-old guard who last season was the front runner for Rookie of the Year. If he did not get hurt, if he did not tear his meniscus, he probably would have won over Stephon Castle. That's a fact. This season, yes, I understand that he was coming back from injury. He came back from that meniscus tear, but that wasn't even why his season debut got delayed. It's because he tore a ligament in his right thumb, his shooting hand. But the last several games, he was finally starting to find a shot again. That horrific game against the Charlotte Hornets, the one benefit about that game is that Jared McCain finally started balling again. And that started becoming consistent game after game after game. So not only did you trade that player to the Oklahoma City Thunder, who they don't need any more help, by the way, but you got absolutely nothing in return. That's the biggest problem, right? This trade deadline for the Sixers was never about the Philadelphia 76ers. It was never about making this team better. The only thing that this trade deadline was about was helping Josh Harris duck the luxury tax. That's it. And that's what pisses Sixers fans off right now. Right? I'm sick and tired of it. Every season, they do something like this. And this is a win now team, right? Joel Embiid is finally healthy again. For how long? We don't know. But as of right now, as of recording this, Joel Embiid is healthy and he's balling again like he's an all-star. He probably should have been an all-star reserve this season. Tyrese Maxey is playing like a superstar. He is incredible. VJ Edgecombe is one of the greatest surprises we could have ever gotten as Sixers fans, right? He just fell into our laps because the Sixers were so terrible last season, because they were rolling out players that we never even heard of. And even before then, they were playing guys that were way past their prime. And even Paul George, which we'll get into the suspension, but even he was playing extremely well throughout the season since coming back from that knee surgery. Right? Jared McCain was finally starting to find his shot again, and you trade him. And if there was a move, I would have understood it. Like, if, let's just say, and I know we're going to cover other teams as well. Giannis obviously didn't go anywhere, but let's just say, out of just fun speculation, that the Bucks reach out to the Philadelphia 76ers and they say, hey, we know you're not giving up VJ Edgecombe. Right? But what if you give us a package of Paul George and Jared McCain? That's a move that you can't pass up, right? I love Jared McCain. I'm sad that he's gone. right? But if you could convince me that it's for Giannis and you don't have to give up VJ Edgecombe, I'm down with that. But the fact that you just traded Jared McCain for picks, that's the frustrating part, right? And you didn't need those picks. Daryl Morey went into the press conference today and basically lied to Sixers fans for 30 minutes. And this is not the first time he's done this. We all remember last season, he went in front of Sixers fans, the media, and said, if you squint hard enough, maybe they can squeeze themselves into the playoffs. Like, this guy just lies constantly. And I just don't understand this. Jordan, before I even get into what Daryl Morey said, what are your overall thoughts about this trade? Because I think it just sucks all around.
I would tend to agree. I think for the value of the player and the talent that this guy brings, now it's a lot of untapped potential so far. You've seen a lot of what he has. He came into college, 5-star player, went to Duke, went through one and done process, typical of a Duke player, but he comes in with a lot of skill. His first year was outstanding for him as a player, but he ended up having his meniscus tear, and that really, you know, hurt him physically and I would assume mentally too. So, then for him to come back, he didn't have the greatest start, and you kind of covered that already. But like from there, he was starting to get back into his good form, and then this just happens, and it's just a disgrace, honestly, on all levels. So actually, before we're recording this podcast, Jared McCain he recorded a little goodbye Philly TikTok about he did like a little song for us, and he seemed genuinely upset to be leaving Philadelphia, but he will do well with Oklahoma City for sure. They have fleeced us in terms of value, because I don't think the picks are good enough value for the player that McCain is and will become. So I mean, we'll end up seeing what happens, but overall, I think the deal, we've got fleeced, and it's credit to you don't credit to Morey, but in a bad way. He deserves all of the blast he's been getting from Sixers fans and social media.
And Daryl Morey said that they were selling high on Jared McCain. There's just no way you were selling high on a player like Jared McCain. Now, if this was last year, okay, maybe I understand that. But you need to get more for a play like that. You need to win now, right? And he even said that, like, we were trying to make moves, but then after we traded Jared McCain, there was nothing out there. This is why I find this whole press conference just a bunch of baloney. That's why it's clear to me, even just in the moment, that they traded Jared McCain just to avoid the luxury tax, because there's no way any competent GM would make a move for Jared McCain to possibly make another move and not have that move already set in stone, right? Again, it's just like, I'll use the Giannis thing, for example. If the Bucks called and said, once again, we want Jared McCain, or we want these specific picks, right? Let's just say you still do the deal with Oklahoma City, right? But before then, they said, we'll take the picks and Paul George and maybe some other players, right? You already have something set in stone. They made they claim to, at least, they made this trade with McCain to the Oklahoma City Thunder, and then they decided to look at other things after that. Like, it just seems like malpractice if that's the truth, right? It's either Morey is a liar, which I'm leaning towards that, or he is a total dumbass. Like, and that's kind of where I'm at with this. And this is the first time I will ever agree with James Harden. This is the first time I will ever agree with James Harden that Daryl Morey is a liar. I think Harden, and we'll talk more about other trades, but Harden is a complete bum in the NBA now. But I'm just getting sick and tired of the lies to this organization, to this fan base. And again, Joel Embiid literally asked you not to do this, and this is exactly what you did. You know, again, I'm not mad that they traded Jared McCain. I'm just mad at what they did after that, which is nothing.
And DJ, honestly, if you were to look at this like from like a really far away, like in specific, like from a distance here, let's look at this trade. You're trading a second year guy who is very young in the league, who has so much untapped potential. Why? And for such little value, just in general, why are we doing this? It doesn't make any sense. It's a terrible mentality, and you trade it to the best team in the league. it doesn't make any sense from like even a further perspective. And then you go in and it even looks worse. I mean, you're trading what a top 20 pick for a first round, which is gonna be a late first rounder
Late.
because the Rockets are good, and then two or three, what is it, 3 second-round picks?
It's 3.
I'm sorry. In the end, we're gonna end up trading those second-round picks, and maybe in the offseason, who knows? Like I mean, sure, now we have more play money, I guess, but it's whatever. I still think the player had so much potential. He's putting out unreal numbers as a rookie, like numbers that like Curry was putting up in general in games played. I don't have the exact number, but stats I saw throughout Twitter and social media. But like he was putting up incredible numbers in his rookie year, and you just couldn't. I'm sorry, you just can't do that in his second year. He needs longer. He needs much longer, and it's really disappointing to see him gone now as a Sixers fan. I think that, like I said, there's a lot of potential, and it's now lost on the Sixers. And credit to the Thunder for finding a good deal as they have in recent years. So fair play to them.
Yeah, last season, 23 games, he averaged 15 points, 46% from the field, 38% from three. This season, obviously, with his minutes down, he's averaging about 6.6 points per game, 38.5% from the field, and 37.8% from three. Again, obviously, his numbers went down, but again, he's coming back from injuries. He was playing a lot less. You already have 3 guards in your rotation with Tyrese Maxey, VJ Edgecombe, and Quentin Grimes. But again, just in his last couple of performances, I mean, you had against the Clippers, he had 6 points. Against the Pelicans, he had 12. Against the Milwaukee Bucks, 17 points. He shot 6 of 8 from the field, 5 of 6 from three in that game. And then even that Charlotte game, again, 16 points, 4 of 8 from three in that game. This is like the biggest thing. This organization, right? And I'm specifically talking about Josh Harris. He does not know basketball. He does not care about this team. And that's just the way it's always going to be. It doesn't matter what GM is there. You could have one of the best general managers in all of sports, right? You could have Daryl Morey, you could have Sam Presti. It doesn't matter, right? As long as Joshua Harris is the owner of this franchise, it will be the same story no matter what, right? This is a guy with many teams that he owns, right? He owns the Sixers, he owns the Commanders, he owns the New Jersey Devils. He's a part owner of a soccer team. This dude just cares about getting money. And you know what? Fair enough. But it's not fair to this fan base. This fan base wants to win. We've suffered for years and years. I mean, this whole season is about celebrating the 2001 team that went to the finals. And then you do something like this, right? I mean, we talked about all offseason, especially with Daryl Morey. We got younger. Well, you just traded that. And the Sixers needed bench scoring. And you know what they did? They traded their bench scoring. Right. And sure, maybe McCain was getting a little left behind with Maxey and VJ, but McCain would have been a great bench player for the Sixers going forward. We've seen this time and time again. Maybe this is another story with Tyrese Halliburton going from the Sacramento Kings to going to the Indiana Pacers. Maybe this is a Jalen Brunson story going from the Dallas Mavericks to the New York Knicks. Right. We've seen this time and time again. Now we don't know. We don't know what's going to happen with this. Obviously, he's going to the Thunder, who already have Shea. They already have Jalen Williams. They already are stacked with players, Chet Holmgren, Luke Dort, Caruso. Where is he going to fit in? I don't know. The Thunder right now are dealing with a ton of injuries. J-Dub has been out for most of the season, to be fair. And Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's now sidelined at least through the All-Star break with an abdominal strain. So we'll see how long he's out for. So, I mean, Jared McCain, in terms of talking about the Thunder, he's going to be good for them. Right, he's going to be kind of part of their long-term future because they're not going to be able to pay Dort, Hartenstein, Caruso. They're going to have to just kind of focus on their young core because they just gave huge contracts to Shea, J-Dub, and Chet. That's going to be the good part. I mean, and you do have young players. You do have Nikola Topic. You do have Thomas Sorber coming up, who are currently out with injuries. Fortunately, Topic has been dealing with cancer, which has been awful, and I know he's kind of on the road to recovery from that. And hopefully we see him back on the court soon. So they have a ton of young talent, but now to add Jared McCain to that. And like, that's the reason why they've been kind of losing games is just because of the injuries. But even still, they have one of the best records in the NBA. So imagine all of those pieces coming back together and you add Jared McCain, because the Thunder, they need shooting. And Jared McCain's a really solid 3-point shooter. the Sixers could have used that as well. And if the Sixers wanted to get value for Jared McCain, why not just trade Jared McCain straight up? Like that's why it's clearly a thing about the luxury tax. Because if the whole thing was about getting better, why is a late first round pick from the Rockets more valuable than Jared McCain himself? Like I don't understand that, Jordan.
It's bad. It's bad. Like you said, Morey said it's the highest sell-on value for him. I don't buy that. I think he's going to be so
No.
much better than that. He's going to be worth many more picks than what we were given, or many better picks and better players. And yeah, I would have liked a player swap if we were going to trade him, maybe from the Thunder or a different team. If the option was out there, if this was the best option on the board, it's honestly terrible.
Yeah, there's many players you could have gotten from the Thunder, and obviously they weren't going to give up any of them because why would they? Picks are meaningless to them. They have 1,000 of them, and it's not even like it's the Clippers picks. It was the Rockets pick, and the Rockets are pretty good right now. I mean, they've been struggling the past several games, but they're going to make the playoffs. You know, they might get past the first round. Who knows? So it's going to be a late first round pick, but you could have maybe tried to get an Aaron Wiggins or an AJ Mitchell or a Cason Wallace. Like, obviously, I don't think any of this would happen, right? But if you're going to trade him to the Thunder, that's what you would get. Or you would use Jared McCain and maybe the picks you have to get like a Herb Jones or something of that sort, or Trey Murphy, any of those players from the Pelicans, any of that stuff. I would understand why you would trade Jared McCain. That's why it makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I'm just pissed about it. And Sixers fans, they deserve to be mad about it because you traded a 21-year-old guard who had a ton of potential. Now, I keep getting comments. You keep acting like he's Allen Iverson. Nobody ever said that, right? And I get he had 20 good games last season, but this whole thing is about kind of moving on to the next phase, right? Kind of moving out of the Joel Embiid era while still trying to compete now while he's still healthy. Right? You had Jared McCain. You got that pick last year at number 16. It's so bizarre to me. It doesn't make any sense. And I don't know what they do moving forward. And if you wanted to get under the luxury tax, why didn't you trade some of these other players that you don't even use? Like, for example, they got their butts kicked last night, especially in the second half by the Los Angeles Lakers. That second half was just abysmal. And they didn't play Andre Drummond for a second of it. That's the thing. I don't understand why they didn't. If they were going to get rid of a player, why not get rid of Andre Drummond? And the Sixers got out rebounded 42-28. 42-28. Andre Drummond could have helped with that. Andre Drummond barely plays anymore unless Joel Embiid is out, right? So he played the other night against the Golden State Warriors just because Joel Embiid sat out with that back-to-back. You could have traded Andre Drummond if that's the route you were going to go. Obviously, Eric Gordon, you weren't playing him anyways. Like this is why it's so I can't even process this still days later. Like, are you kind of in the same boat?
I sadly am in the same boat, and it really showed in yesterday's game. Missing McCain, because I guarantee he would have played. So
yep. Mm-hmm. And again, you need that scoring, especially Paul George, right? Paul George is out he was suspended for 25 games. He's not going to be eligible to return until March 25th against the Chicago Bulls. At that point, you'll have 10 games left. And I mean, there are some positives to that suspension. Obviously, it helped the Sixers get closer to the luxury tax, which, maybe played part into this whole McCain trade. But the whole thing is about the health of Paul George. Maybe with him resting this time, he's able to be healthy. So that way, when we are playing those final 10 games, he can get himself back into game shape. So by the time we get to the playoffs, he's ready to roll. But without Paul George, right, you need as much scoring as you can get. And the Sixers, they struggled in this game. And Tyrese Maxey, he didn't play great in that first half. I mean, he started going off in the second half. You need a guy that can get you a bucket off the bench. You need that Energizer bunny. Right. I always compare it to like the Indiana Pacers with like a guy like TJ McConnell, right? When TJ kind of gets into the game, he's going to provide you some scoring. He's going to provide you some oomph. I mean, even Kelly Oubre can be that type of guy at times, but he's in the starting lineup. Right. So that, just for things like that, it doesn't make any sense to me. And they claim that all this was to convert Dominic Barlow. You did not need to make these moves to convert Dominic Barlow. You already had an open roster spot. It's like that stuff, just get that excuse out the window, right? And Dominic Barlow fully deserved a standard contract, right? It made sense. He's been playing extremely well. And if anything, he's been their fourth best player, right behind the usual Joel, Maxey, and BJ. But you didn't have to do that. And then they claim, based on the ESPN reports, that a lot of this has to do with re-signing Quentin Grimes in the offseason, which, again, doesn't make any sense to me. Quentin Grimes, he's an okay player, but he hasn't played great the last several games. I mean, you look at that Lakers game, he had 4 points in 27 minutes. He shot 1 of 2 from the field. He took 0 shot attempts in the second half. 0. So you're telling me you want to re-sign him? And if you remember last offseason, Jordan, he wanted 25 to 30 mil per year. And no team even offered him that. He was a restricted free agent, meaning that any team could have given him an offer sheet, and the Sixers had the option to either let him go or they could match that offer. Do you think it makes any sense? Because I don't at all, that they would prioritize Quentin Grimes, who I don't think is a great player. He had a decent year last season when he joined the Sixers, when everybody was already injured. Do you think it makes any sense to prioritize him over Jared McCain?
Completely not, no. But going back to the point about Eric Gordon and all that stuff. So, like, yeah, we released Eric Gordon. Now we have 2 open spots. Dominic Barlow can fill one, and then we're still left with the 1 open spot. Like, a player could have been brought in for sure. But I'm done with that completely now. Done with it completely. I don't really like pursuing Quentin Grimes over Jared McCain personally, because there's just, like I said, I prefer development over a guy who's already been in the league for a longer amount of time, and he's going to command a huge salary compared to what McCain would probably. Honestly, McCain would probably want a big salary too once he's out of his rookie contract, but Quentin Grimes does not deserve that at that point, and it's honestly, he's not been playing well in the past month or two. Sure, at the beginning of the season, he was having good points output. He was being put into big situations by Nurse to make big shots, and some of those were going in. Most of them weren't, but at least he was hitting the ones when they were going in. But still, I just don't think prioritizing Quentin Grimes over McCain was the right play, and it's just not a good approach again from the Sixers front office and ownership.
You wouldn't have even had to offer McCain a new contract anytime soon. He still would have had a couple more years on his rookie deal. I believe he would have had 2 years left. And then you go through again, restricted free agency, where you would still, again, re-sign him, hopefully for another new deal. You're not giving him a max contract after his rookie deal. So like that definitely wouldn't be a reason why. Again, this is just a greedy organization that only cares about themselves. And like, I just don't believe the 76ers are ever going to win a championship with Josh Harris as the owner. We just have seen it year after year after year. And Daryl Morey claims that they've gone over the luxury tax since he's been here. When have they made a big move that swung them over to that point? The only big move they made at the deadline was the James Harden move. That's it. And they were able to trade Ben Simmons, another max contract player. So I don't want to hear those excuses. It feels like every single deadline, nothing happens. By the way, if you love Sixers reactions to games, news, and other amazing storylines, make sure to check out DJ Sports Zone on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. And if you want to see clips from the show, make sure to check out our Second Round Syndrome socials. Once again, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. We can't wait to see you there. Now, I kind of want to shift gears a little bit into the deadline itself, because we had so many players move around. I mean, I feel like we had almost 50 players like change teams. And I kind of want to go through like at least some of the big ones, because if we went through every single like tiny move, I feel like we'd be here all day. Right. So I want to just start off with one of my least favorite moves. And I want to get your opinion on this. James Harden requested out for his 4th time. At this point, like what else do you expect from the beard? And he got traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Right. So what got traded? James Harden goes to Cleveland, and the Clippers get back Darius Garland. What are your before I get into my thoughts on the trade, what are your thoughts on James Harden going to Cleveland? Do you think that moves the needle for them?
I think it actually does. Now Garland was the future for the Cavs before moving him on, but I do think that they're a huge winner in this. You're bringing in he is 36-year-old James Harden, but he does come with a bigger skill set and honestly a better skill set than what Garland brings, and I think he will add a lot to what already exists with a pretty solid Cavs team and a, like you said, wide open East. So I think they do add more in. I know you're looking at me over there. You're not agreeing,
Jordan,
but I have to say I think it's a good move.
Jordan. You're just like all these teams in the NBA that just fall for the Harden tricks. They got 10 years older in age. That's just not I mean, we've seen Harden in the league for such a long time. When has Harden ever proved, at least in the last, I don't, you pick however many years, that he's a difference maker when it matters the most in the playoffs? Will he win you regular season games? Sure. Could he even win you a playoff game? Sure. Right. We saw it with the Sixers, right? He had great performances in game 1 when Embiid was out. And, he was the reason why they won that game 4. But then you look at his performances specifically in game 7, right? We saw that in game 6 and 7 against Boston, right? We also saw that last year in game 7 when he played with the Clippers against the Denver Nuggets. This dude does not improve. In my opinion, he does not move the needle for the Cleveland Cavaliers at all. He's 36 years old, right? And one of the reasons why he wanted to leave the Clippers, who, by the way, were playing like one of the best teams in basketball lately. They won, I believe it was like 17 of their last 21 games. He requests out because they wouldn't commit to a contract extension. He wanted 2 years, $80 million. 2 years, $80 million, making him 38 years old, right? So Cleveland's going to pay that money. And in my opinion, this was a desperate attempt to keep Donovan Mitchell around. That's all this was, right? They're afraid that Donovan Mitchell in the offseason is going to request out because he's going to be, I believe, on an expiring deal at that point. He's going to want out. So they thought, okay, let's bring in James Harden, and maybe that will sway him a little bit. I don't see this doing anything, right? I believe they will once again be a first or probably second round exit. Will he win some games? Yes. But when you look at his fit with Donovan Mitchell, I think it sucks because they both of them are players that need the ball in their hand and they don't play defense. Now, I don't think Donovan Mitchell's a horrible defender, but is he good at it? No. Right? James Harden, it's not like you could say, oh, well, one of them could play off ball. James Harden is terrible at playing off ball. There's a reason why when he was in Brooklyn, Kyrie Irving basically said, you take the reins and I'll feed off of you. Right? Is Donovan Mitchell going to do that? And is that going to work out? I don't know. Will Jared Allen and Evan Mobley thrive off of Harden? Probably. I mean, history shows that bigs around him succeed. I mean, Joel Embiid won the MVP. He made Clint Capella look like a solid NBA player. Ivica Zubac had a great year last season because of James Harden. So I'm sure those two will thrive off of him. But I just think that this is a huge mistake that sets them back. I'm not saying Darius Garland was going to win the Cavaliers a championship, but if you're going to trade Garland, you're going to trade him for James Harden, a guy that has not proved to be a winning player at all. And let me be clear, James Harden, he's a future Hall of Famer, right? He is one of the greatest scorers that this game has ever seen. He's going to get his number retired one day by the Houston Rockets. He is a great player, but he's not a winning player. And that's what frustrates me about this trade, right? I mean, they also made a couple other moves. They also got Dennis Schroeder. They got Keon Ellis for DeAndre Hunter. I think those moves are all right because, they're able to get another guard out there. Keon Ellis can play some defense. I don't like that they got rid of DeAndre Hunter because I think he's that 3-and-D wing that most players want. And they also got rid of Lonzo Ball. They basically shipped him off to Utah. I mean, Utah is looking, I believe they're going to waive him anyways, and they'll seek another team after that. Maybe that's the Sixers. Who knows? If he wants to take less, I don't know if that would make any sense. At least he plays defense. He can get the ball to Maxey, to VJ, to Embiid. Maybe that's something they can look at. But I think the biggest winner of this trade deadline, actually, like I consider Cleveland losers of this trade because of getting James Harden and basically kind of risking your entire future. The biggest winner is the other side of this trade, the Los Angeles Clippers, because they figured out, finally, it took forever. They finally figured out that they were going nowhere with this roster, right? And it's all their fault anyways. They traded all their picks for Paul George. They traded the picks they had left for James Harden. They let Norman Powell walk. to Miami. And I know it was a trade. It was a trade for John Collins, but essentially the reason why they did that trade is because they knew that Bradley Beal was going to come there, which was an epic failure. Bradley Beal played 6 games, 6 horrific games, and now is out the entire season. They finally have realized their mistakes, and Darius Garland, I think, is a decent player, but it's the picks. I mean, they also got Benedict Mathurin and Isaiah Jackson. I think those are 2 decent players to kind of start this rebuild, but they also got a protected pick actually for this upcoming draft, which is great. The thing that kind of stinks about it now is if they tank the rest of the year, which I believe they're going to now, they have to, they're probably going to give a top pick to Oklahoma City, which sucks once again because crazy. They just got Jared McCain, and who knows, they could get the number 1 overall pick in this draft. I mean, it's a possibility that they could get AJ Demanstia. Like the thought of that just is so scary. But the fact that the Clippers not only traded James Harden, they also traded Ivica Zubac to the Indiana Pacers. And I think the Pacers gave up way too much for him, by the way. I mean, the Pacers were looking at kind of replacing Miles Turner, and I understand that. But they gave up way too many picks. You gave up a solid young player in Benedict Mathurin. And now the Clippers can really start this rebuild. Obviously, the question is going to be what happens with Kawhi Leonard. Kawhi Leonard is going to be on an expiring contract next season. So it's going to be actually easier to move him either in the offseason or even by the trade deadline next year. I think this is a win for the Clippers. I mean, good for them for finally realizing that they're going nowhere. Even though they're winning a huge stretch of games, they are still the 10 seed. If they kept winning games, were they going to put themselves in a position to be better than OKC, San Antonio, Houston, Minnesota? I just don't think so.
Looking from their perspective, honestly, I think the Cavs are looking for a way to, win now with Donovan Mitchell in the lineup. So you bring in a player like Harden, and you do have to give away a key player on that team and Darius Garland. Sure, like I said, I think the Cavs did an all right job here. And I'd say they are a winner. They're positioning themselves as a real contender in the East. But I will say that in the West too, in terms of longevity, the Clippers have done really well here too, with bringing in a Darius Garland who's going to grow and thrive there. And yeah, like you said, they're going to have some growing pains there with Kawhi Leonard. And is he going to get a new contract, things like that? It's questionable. It's all up in the air. But I really think that they've done well.
And I know there's tons of people that love James Harden, right? And I was one of those people. I have a James Harden Sixers jersey that I was so sad to never, I have not worn it since. And I hate doing that stuff. I love getting jerseys for players that I adore. James Harden was one of those, but just seeing that he constantly quits on his team year after year after year. I mean, this is his 4th trade request in 6 years. I mean, this started back in 2020. He requested out of Houston. Right. And then a season and a half later, he requests out of Brooklyn. Right. Then after, again, a season and a half of playing in Philadelphia, requests out. Right. And now again, with the Clippers, I mean, he's played with some of the best players you can imagine. Dwight Howard, Chris Paul, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving. You could look at Joel Embiid, Tyrese Maxey, Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. I mean, and some of these players he played with multiple times. He played with Chris Paul 3 times at this point. He played with Kevin Durant and Russell Westbrook 2 times. Actually, Russell Westbrook 3 times. Like, he's had all the help he can get. And now he's got Donovan Mitchell. He's got Evan Mobley. He's got Jared Allen. I don't know how much more help this guy needs. So if he cannot win a championship in Cleveland at this point, which I don't think he will, I think his career, you're going to get a bad taste in your mouth when you think of James Harden. Now you're going to try to think of his time in Houston. I think that's kind of where our brains have to shift. But when you look at him as an all-time great player, you're going to think of all the times he choked in the playoffs. You're going to think of all the times he put on the fat suit and quit on his team. And I still remember that comment that broadcaster made when he got traded to the Clippers. And I think his words are true. You're not the beard. You're not the system. You're the problem. And I just agree with that. Every team he goes to, it's utter chaos. It's not just a coincidence that every team he goes on, something crazy happens. In my opinion, and I'm cool with you having a different opinion. I mean, that's part of why we do this podcast. I want us to have different opinions. I just don't see it working. There are tons of teams that did make great moves. Like I think the Charlotte Hornets, they actually, I think, are doing great things for the future. The big move actually was trading Colin Sexton and getting Kobe White. I thought that was a great move, right? Charlotte Hornets are building something. The other teams that I thought made great moves, the Washington Wizards and the Dallas Mavericks, for two completely different reasons. I can't believe that two trade deadlines in a row were headlined by Anthony Davis, right? So basically, the Mavs dumped Anthony Davis to the Washington Wizards for a bunch of players. I mean, the Wizards got Anthony Davis, D'Angelo Russell, Jaden Hardy, and Dante Exum. And basically, the Mavs got Chris Middleton and a couple other minor role players. They also got a couple meaningless picks. I mean, like, one of the picks they got was the Oklahoma City Thunder pick. I mean, and that's going to be like last. So the picks they got, they don't really matter. I believe they got a Warriors pick in 2031 that's like top 20 protected. I mean, how pointless is that? It was literally a salary dump to get out of Anthony Davis. And that's why I kind of think it's a win on both sides. I mean, obviously, when you tie the whole Anthony Davis thing to the Luka trade, it gives you a bad taste in your mouth because some people are going, you basically traded Luka Doncic for Chris Middleton. But here's the thing to look at least if there's a positive note for Dallas Mavericks fans, is by some miracle, you landed Cooper Flagg, right? And now that you finally got rid of Anthony Davis, right, you finally got rid of that big contract, you can now focus on building around Cooper Flagg, which, you know, is a different situation than Flagg was expecting to go into. He was expecting to immediately go into a contending situation with AD, with Kyrie Irving, with some of the other pieces they have, PJ Washington, Gafford, Lively. But now we're in a situation where Dallas can now start completely over. There's no more pressure with that. The question is going to be what they do with Kyrie Irving. Like, do they keep him around as a mentor? Because I don't think Kyrie Irving's winning on the Dallas Mavericks anytime soon. They're going to need a couple seasons before we get there.
They're going to reset, and that's okay. But I do think the true loser is Nico Harrison for initially
Yep.
dealing Luka away for whatever that trade was, the trade that broke, that created Sham's career pretty much from scratch, following Woj leaving and going into college basketball. But he is the loser here in this trade deadline for like you said, the value of Luka Doncic for Chris Middleton and a bunch of role players. I'm sorry, it's just not. It's not good, and he deserved to be fired.
Right.
Rightly, and it should have happened earlier. And I genuinely think he got super lucky to even still be staying in that position. And I think the Mavs have recovered in an all right position to be able to move on and push forward. So yeah, but I do think the Wizards, moving on from the Mavs, but I do think the Wizards were definitely a team that was able to, stack up some star players. They added Trae Young. They've added, like you said, they've added other players as well, part of the trades and things like that. And I think that they have an interesting future. But again, it's the Wizards. I don't want to sound like like an NBA casual here, but like the Wizards, like they've needed stars for a while. And the last star they had was like kind of a star in Bradley Beal. And like they've needed a player or players like that to kind of grow that team. The team has always kind of had a bit of like I don't know, it's kind of never been the biggest one in the DC area, and I feel like sports there, they're trying to get it to grow, but the Wizards, they've needed this, and I think in adding those two stars throughout the trade deadline, it'll really help them grow and move on in the future.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny you said that. A couple years ago, I think this was probably 3 years ago, my dad and we went on a trip to DC. We actually saw a Sixers Wizards game in DC, Capital One Arena. And I remember the broadcaster said something of the sorts of DC is the best sports city. And I just couldn't stop laughing.
How many Sixers fans were at that game?
Probably more than Wizards fans.
Because it's the same for Phillies when they play the Nationals. And it's the same for when the Eagles play the Commanders. I mean, the city just doesn't get behind its sports teams as big as Philadelphia does or any other city around the nation. And maybe the addition of Trae Young and Anthony Davis will help them. Who knows? But I think they finally are investing in their team, which is shocking. So yeah, it's good to see.
Here's the thing, right? They had to make this move, and it's the same thing. Like Utah also made a huge move to get Jaren Jackson Jr. They traded 3 first-round picks and a couple miscellaneous young players and like George Niang, just players that don't really matter, but the picks were the main part of this for Jaren Jackson Jr. So for teams like Washington and for Utah, at this point, they've kind of given up on the draft because the lottery is so inconsistent. The last 2 years, the team that got the number 1 overall pick were the 10 seed and they were in the play-in. And some of the worst teams ended up getting a pretty bad pick. I mean, we saw the Detroit Pistons for years being the worst team in all of basketball end up with the 5th overall pick. Right. So I just think teams at this point are kind of giving up in the lottery. It's like, okay, we keep tanking year after year after year, and we keep getting a mid player because we end up getting the 8th overall pick, even after being the worst team. So I think making a move, I'll talk Washington specifically first. I wasn't super thrilled about the Trae Young trade. I think it's a little bit better with Anthony Davis. Anthony Davis is a great player. I did see a report earlier that he's not happy to be there. I know it's all going to depend on whether or not Washington offers AD an extension, which I don't think they should. I think if they don't do it, it's a low risk move because if it works out, maybe you're able to re-sign him later. But if you sign him to a big contract and he stinks or he's always injured, you're going to be stuck like you were with the awful Bradley Beal contract that you were somehow able to get out of because Phoenix was stupid enough to take it. It will sell jerseys, right? There will be people that I think Wizards fans have been just begging for something. And I think they'll fit nicely with some of their young players, Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, Bob Carrington, Bilal Coulibaly, Trey Johnson. I mean, they got some decent young talent there. Are they going to contend in the Eastern Conference because they got Trae Young and AD? No. I mean, Trae Young is a player that doesn't play a lick of defense. He's a very inefficient shooter. He's a great passer. He can be a great scorer, but I just don't see that as a great move. And then you have Anthony Davis, who is never healthy. Right. I think the good thing about AD, I think he is a winner himself because at least he's now out of Dallas and the pressure's off him a little bit because when he was in Dallas, he was the man because he was the player that they sought out for Luka Doncic. Right. They didn't open it up to other teams. They said, we're specifically calling the Lakers for AD. Right. So the pressure was automatically on Anthony Davis, whether he wanted it to be or not. Because I know when he was on the Lakers, at least what they said, LeBron, Rob Pelinka, they were trying to push the franchise onto AD, but that wasn't really working. That was kind of forced on him when he went to Dallas. Now he can work with these young guys. Hopefully, maybe they can make a play-in push. But again, I'm not going to say, oh, they're a contender now. Now, when you look at Utah's side of things, I think that's a little bit more interesting, right? Because even though the Western Conference is more packed, you pair Jaren Jackson Jr., a great defensive player, with Keontae George, who I think is just one of the most underrated young players in the league right now. You pair him up with Lauri Markkanen, who's having a great season, right? Last season, we kind of forgot about Markkanen because he was dealing with injuries. He wasn't as efficient. He's kind of back to where he was before. And then Walker Kessler is going to return from injury. So you pair all those players together. I mean, and you got some other decent young players in Utah. Bryce Sensabaugh, who knows about Ace Bailey? We'll see. I mean, I like what Utah's cooking up. I mean, what are your thoughts on Utah?
I think they'll be pretty good. A lot of good players there. Depends on the ball movement itself. There's a lot of, I guess, players like ball's going to stick around. A bunch of players not going to be as great passing. I think that'll lack, but pure shooting ability and points, they're going to be there for that team. Bringing in Jaren Jackson, a player like that, very, very solid. Very solid. I'm impressed with what they've done, but I think there could be a bit of ball movement problems. But they'll have to grow together, grow that chemistry, and maybe we'll see some good production there.
Well, just because of the players they have, I think Utah has a better shot at doing something next season than the Wizards do. I think they just have
absolutely
more promising young talent that I think will fit a lot better together. I mean, Jaren Jackson was great in Memphis, especially when you had that core of Ja and Desmond Bane and Dylan Brooks and even Steven Adams there. I mean, that was a great core. So now he's at least kind of starting fresh with Utah. I mean, Memphis, I think they're doing the right thing with the rebuild. I mean, they're just going for picks now, which is great. I mean, I believe they got 7 first-round picks between Bane and Jaren Jackson combined, which good for them. I mean, that's tough to do. So I appreciate that they're going with this rebuild mode. And then a couple other teams I want to mention here. Obviously, Giannis didn't get dealt, but before we go into the Bucks for a second, because I don't want to waste much more time with the Bucks. They wasted so much time around the league for the last couple of months. I do want to talk about the move that was made because of Giannis staying with Milwaukee. The Warriors made a move, but it wasn't for Giannis. They decided to go for Timu Giannis and trade for Kristaps Porzingis. They got rid of Buddy Hield and Jonathan Kuminga to the Atlanta Hawks. And this move, it just shows that it proves to me that the Warriors dynasty is just officially over. It's done with. Like, this was just a desperate move just to get rid of Jonathan Kuminga at this point. Because Kristaps Porzingis, I mean, Kendrick Perkins was joking on ESPN when this trade happened. He kind of forgot that Kristaps Porzingis was even in the league, and I kind of agree with that. Like, Porzingis has just not been relevant since he won the championship in Boston, and even in that postseason run, he barely played. So him on the Warriors with Steph, like it just shows injuries all over it. I mean, Jimmy's out until next year. Steph's old. Draymond's old. And then Porzingis is just injury prone. So I don't even know if Porzingis is going to play this season. I kind of like at least what Atlanta did. I think Atlanta's kind of been a little bit all over the place since the Trae Young deal. I mean, I know there were talks of them getting Anthony Davis possibly. I mean, I like Jalen Johnson. Kuminga, I don't think is a high risk. I mean, I believe he is a team option for next year, so they could just pick that up and see what he does next season. Worst case scenario, he stinks and he leaves in free agency and they don't have to worry about it. I mean, I think Atlanta made a good move getting Kuminga. Now we don't have to talk about the Kuminga saga anymore. I mean, are you glad that that's finally over?
It's done. I'm glad it's over. I was not really thrilled to see the reaction between Steve Kerr and Jonathan Kuminga. I'm glad that's done with, and we can kind of move on from there. Like you said, the Warriors dynasty is sadly dying, and it's really unfortunate to see that and say that, because I think what Steve Kerr and the GM and everyone has done with Golden State and building up that team, and slowly those pieces have been either like aging out or being dished off to other teams, and I guess we're seeing the end of that era, and I guess it's time to move on.
And speaking of moving on, the Chicago Bulls were like part of every trade. I felt like they got rid of all their players, and like I don't understand what Chicago's ever doing, but like here it's like I feel like they're too good to tank for the rest of the season, but they're not good enough to make a push. I mean, they don't have a player that's above 7 feet tall, which I think is just kind of funny. I mean, do you see this kind of really being to a start of a Chicago rebuild? Because all the trades they made, just even going back to a year or two ago, I mean, they got rid of DeMar DeRozan, Zach LaVine, Nikola Vucevic, Alex Caruso, Lonzo Ball, Kobe White, Ayo Dosunmu. They didn't get any first-round picks for any of these players. I mean, they got some meaningless players in some of these trades. I mean, Jaden Ivey's good. I'm excited to see Ivey there. Dillingham, I mean, he hasn't really been good with Minnesota. Maybe he gets something. I mean, they got Sixers legend Gershon Yabusele. I mean, I don't know what that's going to do. He had one good game. Anthony Simons, we'll see what he does there. I mean, I don't really understand what Chicago's doing except collecting second-round picks. I don't see a real future for them.
I do hope the Bulls get better. I love seeing the Bulls as a good team. I think they're a great asset to the league, to having a good team. I think their players they have are pretty solid, but like you said, they're not getting the greatest value for the players that they're dishing out. So maybe Ivy can make a difference to that team. Maybe Simons can continue to make a difference for that team. Who knows? We'll see.
And the last thing I want to mention before we end the show today, I mean, overall, this trade deadline was, I'm just going to say weird. Like, that's the word I'm going to kind of use for it. It wasn't as intense as it was last season. We saw so many big moves, so many shocking moves. It just kind of felt underwhelming, obviously, in comparison to that, but just some of those, it just felt odd. Obviously, there were some teams that are total losers because they didn't make any moves. I mean, I know Miami Heat fans are pissed. Houston Rockets didn't make a move when they probably needed to, since they haven't been great the last couple of games. Detroit made some weird moves. But the one team specifically that I'm just kind of ashamed of at this point is the Milwaukee Bucks. We spent so much time talking about Giannis, talking about specific locations that we want him to go to. We spent pretty much half of last show doing that. And then all of a sudden he's not going anywhere. And we heard that Giannis, he doesn't want to leave the Bucks. The Bucks, they don't want to move on from Giannis. I'm just kind of tired and done with it. At this point, they can have each other. And I think, unfortunately, and this is the hard part as a basketball fan, we have to accept that the Bucks are not going to win anything ever again. Giannis, he's not going anywhere. And I respect that to a point. You're loyal and you want to stay there for the rest of your career. But as a fan of basketball who wanted to see him compete for another title in another market, the fact that that's not going to happen, and I don't know if that's ever going to happen, it's just really disappointing. It's going to be very interesting to see. Of course, we're going to continue to talk about it. Make sure to check us out on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, iHeart, Amazon. Like, share, subscribe. Let us know what your thoughts are on this trade deadline. Are you satisfied? Are you mad? We can't wait to hear it. I'm DJ Sports Zone. We got Jordan Sabel here, and we will see you next time. Peace out.
See ya.